today I'm trying to make a contoured fit pant pattern using my pant strap from the basics of pattern making for fashion design. If you've been following along with me, you know that January was pants drafting month. I'm going to continue on through February because I'm teaching a pants fitting workshop at the end of February. So I thought I'll just continue with this topic. And I just reviewed this book, Designing Apparel Through Flat Pattern. And what I want to share with you today is how to take a pants pattern and make a contoured body fitting pant. This has a center back seam with a fisheye dart in it to help draw it in closer. So think stretch woven leggings. That's the look I'm going to go for here. And the first thing I'm going to do here is adjust my trouser pattern into a more fitted slack pattern. So let me show you how I'm going to do that first, and then we're going to follow along with the instructions in this book to create a fisheye dart with a princess seam in the back leg. And then the cool thing is, after this is all drafted, I'm going to sew it together and I'll share it during FabFit Friday at the end of the week. So I'm super excited about this project. Okay, so what I did here was I created lines on the front and back leg that would basically line me up with the center front of the pattern. So you can see here, I went from center front at the center front waist, and I just drew that all the way down. And now I'm realizing that there is a 1/2 inch seam allowance here, so I'm going to move it back a 1/2 inch actually. So let me just do that over here. I'll do it in blue. Okay. And then, oh, and I want to continue that to the knee, because what I want to do here is I want to use that as a guide to take in the leg, because you can see this is a really full leg, and I'll just put the photo here. This is how this pattern fits me. So if you remember, there's a full leg, and I want to now make a tapered leg. So at the knee, I'm going to be tapering this pattern in so the inseam comes right to the edge at the knee. So I'm going to draw it in and make it tapered to the knee. And I'm going to use the center front line as a guide. So basically, I'm going to do that. And I'm also using the instruction from the book to create this contoured fitting pant. They want you to shorten your crotch extensions by using 1/5 of your full hip measurement as your crotch extension from this center line. So I'm going to go ahead and measure. I already did the math. It's 2.5 inches. So that would put me right here. Okay, and then obviously my seam allowance would be there then, but it's going to be right here. So that's going to help me then also take in that inseam. So what I'm going to do here is I'm basically just going to draw myself a new crotch line like this, and then I'm going to continue this down, and my goal is to get to the knee line. So I'm just going to go like this. Okay, and so this is going to become my new inseam, and I think you can see that it creates an inseam that touches at the knee. Now this would be how I would draft my jean pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my side seam in a like amount. So I'm just going to measure from here. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and obviously, let me just add my seam allowance back in just so we're clear. All right, so there it's finished with the seam allowance. Okay, so I'm going to actually just trim off, maybe I'll do 1 inch at the side seam. So I'm going to come in 1 inch right here. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to taper that up to the crotch line like this. All right, so I'm taking in the leg. And I think I can do something like this. Something like this. Okay, so you can see I've taken in this leg, and I can smooth this out a little bit here. Okay, so that would be the adjustment for the front leg, and I'm just going to continue this down all the way like this. So I'm just going to continue this straight down like this. All right, so there's my new front leg, and just to be really clear here, I'm just going to cut off the extra. Let me just draw this. Okay, and then let me just trim this off. Oop, I'm cutting into my back leg. That's not a good thing. All right, so I'm just going to continue this like this. All right, so you can see what I'm cutting off. Okay. And then I'm going to cut straight across the bottom and cut straight up my side seam. All right, so here is the pattern. Now, if you remember when I tried this on during Fab Fit Friday, I did not sew my waist darts, and I really don't want waist darts in this draft. So I am going to remove, I have 2 1/2-inch darts. I'm going to remove a 1/2 inch over here. And basically I'm going to go like this to get rid of it. And I'm going to bring in the center front a 1/2 inch as well. And I know you guys are, anyone who follows along with me is saying to themselves, oh, an angled center front, that's not good for a rectangle shape. Remember, if you have a defined waist, angling the center front is better because it curves the front waistline. Well, I'm not going to worry about that with this pattern because this is going to be a fitted legging pattern. I'm not concerned about the drape of the leg because it's going to be fitted onto me. So I'm going to go ahead and try this. I'm going to get rid of these 2 darts, and I'm going to cut them off here. I'm going to cut straight across here, and then I'm going to cut this off here. Okay, so this is my completed front leg, and this is all the work you need to do to create the contoured fitted draft in the book. So I've done the whole thing for the front leg. I'm going to put that aside. Now let's look at the back leg. First I have the Scotch tape where I cut into it by accident here. Okay, so on the back leg, I drew my center back starting at the top of the waist and center back edge, but you can see that brings me way out. So instead of drawing it there, I'm going to draw it, I'm going to follow the instructions in the book actually. So the instructions in the book have you draw the center line where it starts to curve in at the center back. So that's going to move that over 1.5 inches. So let me go ahead and draw a new line right there. Okay, so this is going to be my center back right here. And again, I want to shorten the crotch extension. So the instructions for adjusting the crotch extension in the back is to take 2/5. So because my full hip is almost the same front and back, it works out to be 2.5 inches as well. So my back crotch extension is going to be 5 inches, 2/5 of the full hip. So I'm going to go ahead and measure that. I'm actually short by 3/8 of an inch. So I think instead of adding there, I'm just going to check something here. If I move that line back a little bit to where it's straight here, that will give me 5 inches. So I think I'm not going to add anything to it. I'm just going to make that work like that because it's having you draw this line here. And the first line I drew is pretty close to where I drew it here, but I'm going to back it up just a little bit more because I'm not going to, I mean, I really don't think I need to add. Maybe I do, but if I draw the line here, then that would be 5 inches from the center back. But if I do it down here, then I'm almost a 1/2 inch short. Okay, and then I want to get it down to this mark here, which is now a 1/2 inch more in. Oops, let me just see what that is. So that would be, if I take that much off, 2.5 inches and 2.5 inches, that's going to make it a really narrow back leg. All right, so after examining all of these things, I think I'm going to go back to my first line that I drew because I don't want to make my back leg too narrow. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to add that 3/8 that I need right here. So this is me just fussing along trying to figure out what to do, like make a decision on the shape I want. So I'm going to add the paper. I only need to add it for a little bit because then I'm going to be taking it back in. So let's go ahead and add that 3/8 that I needed right there. And then I want to bring it back in to here. So I'm just going to connect my center back line to my new crotch line, something like this. Okay, and then I'm going to continue this straight down. Okay, so that's going to be my new inseam, and I'm going to trim off, let's see, 2 inches. If I do 2 inches, I just want to see what that measurement's going to be. That's going to be 8 inches at the knee in the back, and it's going to be, what do I have in the front? I have, so my front leg is 9 inches. So my front leg would actually be a little bit wider. I don't want to make my back leg narrower. So I'm going to adjust the back leg so it is, let's make the back leg at the knee 9 inches as well. I think I'll just try that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to my knee, and I am going to find 4.5. So 4.5 would put me here, and then I would need a 1/2 inch. So I am going to push this out a little bit because, like I said, I don't want to make it too narrow in the knee. So now it's not this line, and then this is going to continue down like this. Then on this side, I'm going to make it 4.5 plus my seam allowance will put me here. Okay, so this is where I'm going to draw my side seam will come something like this. Okay, and now I have my new side and inseams. Now this part of what I just did, I combined the instructions to shorten the crotch extensions that's in the book, but I also took in the inseam just to create a more fitted leg. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here is let's look at the instructions for creating that fisheye dart. So at crotch level, they tell you, and actually they have you fold the pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and fold my pattern in half like this. Okay, and what they want you to do is measure out between a 1/2 inch and an inch. I'm going to go for the full gusto here, a full inch. And then I'm going to create the fisheye dart with a slight curve to 1 inch below my full hip here. So I'm just going to go ahead and make like a little bit of a curved thing there. And then 2 inches above my knee. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a curve like this. Okay, and then when I get it about there, I'm just going to do a straight line down to here. Okay, so that is my fisheye dart. All right, so the next step is I'm going to use my tracing wheel to transfer that to the other side. Like this. Okay, then I'm going to open it back up. And I'm going to cut my pattern out. So right on my center line. And I'm going to come up here. Just going to cut this in half like this. Now notice I also went right through the dart. I moved my dart. Oh, that was the other thing I didn't tell you. I'm sorry. I moved my dart over so it was centered on the center line, because now I'm also going to trim off the dart legs. So there'll be no dart in this pants. Unless you have a 2 dart pattern, then you would. But basically I'm going to cut off the dart legs, and now I have, so I got to cut this off too, hold on. Let me just dash in where I transferred here so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so now I can cut that off. I cut out the fisheye dart, I cut the back leg in half, and I also cut out the dart legs. So I have basically a princess seam for pants. Okay, so the other thing they want you to do here is they want you to kind of curve out the area here. It's pointy here and then it's straight. We want to curve this area out and make a little bit more room for your behind. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add some paper to each side. Like this. And I'm just going to contour that out a little bit. And actually, just to keep it real simple, I'm going to take the other side of my pattern and I'm just going to tape it right here so I'll do them both on this piece of paper, then I'll cut it out. I'm not going to add a lot. I'm just going to add like maybe a 1/4 inch. So I'm just going to add paper here. Oops. Okay, and then at the hip line, I'm just going to measure out a 1/4 inch here on each side. So a 1/4 inch here. and 1/4 inch here. And then basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to blend that out, and then I'm going to blend it back sort of where the base of the dart is. So I'm just going to curve that out a little bit here. I'm just going to make like a little curve here and then blend it back in to the dart. So we're going to curve out and we're going to curve back in like that. So I'm just going to make a little bit of a nicer shape here. And let me just finish by cutting that out. And then of course I have to add seam allowances to this. But basically it's going to be something like this. Oh, I guess I don't need that paper there. And then on the other side, I'm going to cut this out. Okay. It just blends out a little bit right there just to give a little bit more room through the full hip. And then the other thing I would say, when I go to add my seam allowances here, I'm going to reduce the sharpness of this. I'm going to make this curved because you never want like a really sharp shape in a fisheye dart. So I am going to curve those when I add seam allowances. Besides adding seam allowances, this pattern is ready to go. You can see it looks kind of weird. It's got this funny shape to it, but I'm going to try it. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. All right, so let me just, to finish this off, let me just cut this. So there's one piece. This is a funky, funky shape. Here's my other piece. Now remember, I did end up adding that 3/8 of an inch to the back, so we'll see. Okay. All right, so here are my two crazy looking pieces. Remember, I am going to smooth that out a little bit when I add my seam allowances. But basically now I'm going to sew this together, and I'm going to sew it out of a stretch woven. So let's see what this contoured fitted pant looks like. Join me Friday for FabFit Friday to see how this goes. It's going to be very exciting. If you have any questions or comments about this draft, please post those below and I will help you. If you're enjoying my content, consider liking and subscribing to my channel because it helps me grow. And I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch. Have a great rest of your day.